This is a video about preparing your final portfolio in terms of making a copy of it and the organization itself. So up to this point of the quarter, we have been thinking about our portfolio as what I refer to as a sandbox portfolio. Doesn't particularly matter what the portfolio looks like, doesn't really even particularly matter about how the portfolio is organized. But we do at this point, in the final week of the quarter, start to want to be thinking about, well, okay, so how am I arranging this? How am I using visual rhetoric? How am I organizing the material? So there are other videos in earlier modules where we've thought about visual rhetoric. So this one's going to focus more on literally how the portfolio is organized when you submit it. So the very first thing you're probably going to want to do, and this is not absolutely necessary, you don't necessarily need to do this, but I think it's often a good fail-safe at this point. So as people are editing material, making changes within their portfolio, it's nice to have kind of a fail-safe, something that if you do make a mistake, you will be able to think about this idea of, okay, if I accidentally delete something or change something that I'm not happy with, I've got a copy of it as well. And that also has to do with how you'll actually submit it as well. There are ways that you can think about that. Okay. So let's start with this right here. So this is basically a version of kind of where your portfolio probably is this time. You probably got it about me. Probably have like all 4 of your essays. You've probably got a first draft. You've got a final draft. Maybe that's what you'll be working on right now. Maybe it's got your peer review draft that you submitted into the Writing Center for peer review as well. So the question then is how to make a copy. If you go up to the upper corner here of your portfolio to the hamburger, you click on this, go down to make a copy. I really usually rename it. I think, and I've literally made horrible mistakes in the past doing this. WRD, say 103, maybe like AQ20, just so I know what this is right there. And go ahead and just make a copy. So the key here is you want to be able to distinguish your current portfolio from the new copy portfolio. So it literally, the URL will end up being different as well. But sometimes I usually actually go ahead and actually change this as well. So I've got this right here. So I am going to go ahead and just say dummy portfolio, or just dummy copy. AQ20. So then it's very clear to me that I have made these changes, that this is the portfolio I'm working with as well. I may go so far as to actually change the icon again. So this ends up being the setting. So remember, part of the reason why you have a new icon in here is that you want to make sure that it's distinguishable between the two right there. So I'll usually go so far as to actually change the image that I have there as well, just so that I won't make a mistake and accidentally, I know which one I'm kind of dealing with. So we'll try that image right there, upload it. Now the other thing you want to do, and this depends on whether or not, and it has to do with what your thinking is, your dummy portfolio could just be the one that you just kind of keep as a fail-safe. You don't necessarily have to make any changes to it, and any changes or edits you would do to your live portfolio. But sometimes people will actually keep their live portfolio just the way it is and delete out of the dummy. So that's the way that we're going to do it. So one of the things is, if you're planning and then actually submit the dummy portfolio to the Dropbox when the final portfolio is due. So in this case, we probably do want to also make it private within DePaul University as well. You don't probably necessarily need to share it with me at this point because you'll just be submitting it. And go ahead and save settings. So now we have kind of our portfolio kind of ready to go. So a couple of things that we want to be thinking about as we are revising the portfolio as well. First of all is this idea of being consistent. So especially with like Essay 1, there were definitely times where people were like submitting things as like their peer review draft. Maybe it's a PDF. Maybe that's what you have here as well. But remember that you want to have, if you have an early draft and it is a PDF, I want it to be a rich text module so that each page throughout the portfolio would end up being consistent. So you want to make sure that. The other thing that you probably want to do as well is go ahead and delete all the old cover letters as well. So the original cover letter that you ended up having, you'll probably no longer need. Although that is information that I would end up saying that you probably want to keep in some place, just because those thinkings could also be important in terms of how you are what you're going to put into your reflective essay, either in the curated format or the overarching format as well. So make sure that you have deleted any cover letters, because you'll end up having a separate cover letter that you'll end up adding to this as well. Once you have deleted the old cover letters, you may then end up saying, okay, I'm only going to turn in, say, Essay 1 and Essay 2, and I don't necessarily need these two right here. Now, when you submit, you could just go through the process, and actually, since I'm not part of the class, I can't show this right here, but you could end up saying, okay, I'm just not going to punch the things for this draft or this draft or this draft or this draft where I do it. But a lot of times what I do with my dummy copy, if this is the one I'm going to submit, I'll go ahead and just delete those out. I'll say, okay, I don't think I'm going to use that information. So let's go ahead and just delete that out of our portfolio. So we don't want Essay 3. We're going to go ahead and just get rid of that. Nor do we want Essay 4. We're just going to go ahead and get rid of that. I don't need my peer review drafts. I'll go ahead and get rid of that. So I should probably just have, and I probably will also want to add a page here as well, because I do need a cover letter as well. So let's add a cover letter. Let's make the About Me as a part underneath the cover letter as well. So now, one of the things that you probably want to keep in mind is that the very first thing that that you're going to want to end up encountering within the portfolio itself is going to be the cover letter itself. So the cover letter that you're writing to me directly, talking about what is you want me to pay attention to when you have revised in your paper, or things that you do, or also kind of things that you possibly want to change about the class, you like about the class and thought were helpful, or things that you might want to change in the future as well. So the cover letter is probably going to be about the first thing you encounter. The other thing will end up being the About Me page. Everyone did one at the very beginning of the quarter as well. It's not entirely necessary. It's not a requirement of the final portfolio, but it is nice having a picture of you and some information about you to help personalize the material itself right here. Now, eventually, you'll end up probably adding either the elements for your reflective essays that you'll end up having here as well, or your curations, which will end up being in these right here, or another section here that is the reflection itself. But that depends on the format that you're going to end up doing about you as well. Oh, keep in mind that your first draft of either of these papers needs to be the paper that you submitted to me for feedback, either in the form of screencast or that you got conference. We conferenced for Essay 2 or Essay 4, and I give you. The peer review draft isn't the one that you submitted to the Writing Center, is not the one that ends up being the first draft. And remember that this is a requirement, that the first and final draft of whatever 2 essays you revise need to be in there as well. Oh, one of the things that you may want to think about, so like here for this, I just added this cover letter, so there's no information in here as well. One of the things that I do also is I usually generate a style guide, and I keep this in the notes section of my Mac and things like this. And it's just for and so I'll keep things of so module titles are going to be in 40-point font, where text font is going to end up being in 20-point font as well as I go through this. I have the type of font that I'm using. Maybe I'm using different font in different sections. I have that as well. You'll see that, so this is a 104 portfolio, or this is my Hucklebull portfolio. This is a 104 portfolio, and here's the Johnny Quest one. So I end up having the hex codes that I have for the background color blue right here as well. I know that my headers are going to be 28 font, things like this. So this helps you be consistent through the portfolio as well. So that's a good way of making sure that things are consistent through the document itself. The other mantra of the portfolio at this point is going to be publish, publish, publish. You want to make sure that everything that you have in the portfolio has been published, has been saved, and that we can, and you probably also want to use the publish pages feature. So we'll say that multiple of these drafts have not been published. So we want to make sure that the most up-to-date things are in the portfolio itself. All right, I hope this was helpful.